Alright, so picture this. I come home after a work trip, and my wife's acting all weird. Turns out she's been sneaking around with some guy she dated in high school. But here's where it gets crazy. Instead of blowing up, I play it cool, start making my own plans. And trust me, what goes down next? You won't believe how it all flips around, careers on the line, secrets out in the open, and yeah, some serious payback. Buckle up, 'cause this story is wild from start to finish. When I landed at the airport, I was not in a rush. I had been away for a few days and called home a few times, but each call went straight to voicemail. I knew where my wife would be. She had her own plans these days, and I had mine. I took a cab, feeling strangely calm, knowing I was about to make some serious changes. As soon as I arrived home, I started gathering my things, preparing to leave. I went out to the garage and packed up all my tools. The shelves that used to hold my hobbies, projects, and memories were quickly emptied into boxes. By evening, I sat in the kitchen, sipping a cold beer with shrimp, when my phone buzzed. It was my wife, Emily. "Hey there, what are you up to?" she asked in that familiar, casual tone. "Oh, nothing much. Just having a beer with some shrimp," I replied. "Home alone?" she teased. "You know me. I don't love restaurants much," I said, hinting at the fact that we often lived two very different lives. She laughed, but something felt distant. We had been disconnected for a while now. Emily was not the loyal wife I once thought she was. I found out a long time ago that she was seeing someone named Adam, a man she once dated back in high school. It started small messages, casual meetings, but over time they rekindled what they once had. Eventually, it was more than just meetings. They shared a spark that had, apparently, never gone out. At first, I felt like I was left in the dark. It was Emily's friend, Jessica, who finally clued me in. Jessica was one of those women who had gone through a few relationships herself, and she saw right through Emily's excuses. One night, over drinks, Jessica admitted to me, "Emily's been seeing Adam on and off. They even use my place to meet up when you're out of town." Jessica's words left no room for doubt. For a while, I tried to keep the marriage alive, thinking maybe, just maybe, it was something we could work through. But eventually, I had to accept the truth. There was no saving us. That realization changed everything. I contacted Adam's wife, Sarah, and arranged to meet her at a coffee shop downtown. Sarah was someone I had seen at work events and social gatherings. She was always put together, calm, and polite. I felt she deserved to know. I arrived at the cafe a few minutes early. The place was quiet, and a soft melody played in the background. As I waited, I wondered what she would say or if she already knew. When Sarah finally arrived, she greeted me with a small smile. We found a table near the window, and I offered to order for us. "Whatever you choose is fine," she said, taking a seat across from me. As the waiter left, I turned to her and said, "Look, Sarah, there's something I think you need to know." She looked at me, her face neutral, and I continued. "My wife, Emily, has been seeing Adam. I'm planning to file for divorce, and I thought you might want to know in case you're considering doing the same." Sarah's expression did not change. She took a slow sip of her drink, then set it down, looking me straight in the eye. "I've known for a while," she said evenly. "Adam is not exactly subtle. In fact, he has been unfaithful before with a woman named Amanda. But I never saw any reason to get involved. Adam and we do not have a marriage in the traditional sense. He lives in the city. I stay out in the suburbs, close to my family." Her words surprised me. This was not the reaction I expected. Sarah explained further, revealing that her family actually owned a significant portion of the company where both Adam and Emily worked. She was not invested in Adam's life, only in keeping appearances for family events or company gatherings. Over the next hour, we shared our stories, and I found myself feeling strangely comfortable around Sarah. She had an honesty that I appreciated. As we wrapped up, she looked at me with a serious expression. "Listen, if you ever need a place to stay while you sort things out, my family's property has a guest house." I nodded, feeling grateful. That evening, as I sat in my nearly packed apartment, I found myself thinking about Sarah's offer. There was something about her, a resilience and independence that made me realize how different things could be. When Emily returned home the next day, she found her things already in boxes. She tried to act surprised, but I could see she had expected this confrontation for a long time. After a brief, tense conversation, I packed my remaining belongings and left. I had no intention of looking back. The next few days were a whirlwind of change. I found myself moving into the guest house Sarah had mentioned, a quiet, comfortable place nestled away from the busy city life I was leaving behind. Sarah stopped by to check on me now and then, and soon our casual conversations turned into something deeper. One evening, as we shared a quiet dinner, she admitted, "You know, I've always wanted to take full control of the company. My father's given me most of the shares, but I want Adam's side of the family out for good." She went on to tell me that she had been gathering information on Adam's misuse of company funds and his questionable business practices. To my surprise, she asked if I would help her manage a new branch of the business she planned to create. The proposal was tempting, and soon enough we were making plans. Over the following months, I learned more about Sarah's determination. She was sharp, focused, and meticulous. She inspired me to regain control over my life. As our relationship grew, we began to build something meaningful, both personally and professionally. My past with Emily felt like a distant memory, and I was finally moving forward. As Sarah and I grew closer, our plans for the new company division began to take shape. Sarah's vision was impressive. She was not only determined to outsmart Adam, but she had specific ideas about how to make this new venture succeed. She had been handling the family business with such quiet control that, on the surface, Adam did not even realize he was slowly being pushed out. The first real challenge came when Adam and Emily returned from a vacation. They had been to some luxurious beach resort, and from the way they talked, you would think they had just sealed $1 million business deal. Their confidence was nearly comical, but I knew it was only a matter of time before they realized what was really happening back at the company. The day after they returned, Adam tried to call the office, expecting to be greeted by the usual staff. But when he called, he was surprised to hear Sarah answer the phone. "Hello, this is Sarah speaking," she said, her voice calm and professional. Sarah?" Adam stammered. "What are you doing answering the office line?" "Oh, I've taken on a more active role here," she replied smoothly. "I am now the acting CEO." The silence on the other end was palpable. Adam's entire demeanor seemed to shift as he tried to process what Sarah had just told him. His response was a mixture of disbelief and anger. "What? How? When did this happen? Was there some sort of vote?" he demanded. "Yes, the board convened while you were on vacation," she replied, without a hint of sympathy in her voice. "They agreed it was time for some new leadership." Adam, clearly shaken, struggled to find words. Sarah continued without giving him a chance to interrupt. "As the new CEO, I am restructuring the company. You may wish to consider other career options." Adam was stunned. He had no idea this was coming. For so long, he had been so confident in his position, convinced that his role was secure because of his family connections. What he did not realize was that those connections were not enough to keep him safe when he had neglected his responsibilities and mismanaged company funds. I was in the office that day, standing just outside Sarah's door as she had this conversation with him. When she finally hung up, she looked at me with a slight smile, as though she had just closed an unimportant chapter in her life. "Well, that's done," she said, leaning back in her chair. "Now we have real work to do." That evening, Sarah and I went out to celebrate. We found a quiet restaurant, away from the usual city crowds, and as we toasted to new beginnings, I could not help but feel that this was a turning point for both of us. There was something almost poetic about the way things had come full circle. Both of us moving on from people who had betrayed us, finding strength in each other. Over the following weeks, Sarah worked tirelessly to secure her position. She called in a team of auditors to go over the company's financials, uncovering years of mismanagement under Adam's watch. The findings were worse than even she had anticipated, but Sarah handled it all with grace. She gave Adam a choice. He could resign quietly, or the evidence would be turned over to the authorities. Adam, of course, chose to resign. For him, the alternative was far too risky. Emily, on the other hand, was not handling the changes so well. She had assumed that her relationship with Adam would secure her a comfortable lifestyle. When Adam was forced out, Emily's position at the company also came into question. Sarah decided to keep Emily employed but downgraded her to a role far removed from her previous managerial position. One day, Emily confronted me in the office parking lot. She looked desperate, her usual confidence replaced with uncertainty. "So, you're really going through with this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes," I replied, not offering any sympathy. "This is how it has to be." Emily glanced down, almost as if she had expected me to reconsider. "You're different now," she murmured, almost as if speaking to herself. "I thought you'd fight for us, for what we had." "What we had," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "Emily, what we had ended a long time ago, and you made sure of that." Emily opened her mouth as if to say something, but then she stopped herself. Maybe, in that moment, she realized there was nothing she could say to change my mind. She turned and walked away without another word. That evening, I called Sarah to tell her about the encounter. She listened patiently, and when I finished, she said, "Well, it sounds like she's finally starting to understand." In the months that followed, the company flourished under Sarah's leadership. She appointed new managers, updated old systems, and brought in fresh talent. I took on my role as the director of the new division with pride, enjoying every day of work. It felt good to be part of something meaningful, to be building a future with someone I respected. Sarah and I grew closer, and eventually, our professional partnership blossomed into something more. We started spending weekends together, exploring the nearby countryside or cooking dinner at her place. It was a peaceful, fulfilling time, unlike anything I had ever experienced before. Then, one Sunday morning, as we were having coffee on her porch, Sarah looked at me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you think you'll ever marry again?" she asked, her voice soft. The question caught me off guard, but I smiled and took her hand. "Maybe," I replied, "if it's with the right person." Sarah's smile grew, and I knew that whatever the future held, we would face it together. As Sarah and I deepened our connection, our lives intertwined in ways I had not expected. Workdays were filled with purpose and focus, and in the evenings, we shared a quiet comfort. Weekends felt like mini vacations, where we could be ourselves, free from the complications of our past. Yet, despite the peace we'd found, our exes still lingered in the background, refusing to fade away entirely. Adam's departure from the company was only the beginning of the fallout. While Sarah handled her new role as CEO with grace, she knew that taking full control would require dealing with the remaining 25% of shares owned by Adam's parents. Although they had largely kept out of company affairs, Adam's sudden resignation had stirred them up, and they were reluctant to part with their shares, especially now that Sarah was in charge. One afternoon, Sarah asked me to join her for a meeting with Adam's parents. We met in a private room at a quiet restaurant, where Sarah calmly laid out her vision for the company and her intentions for a buyout. Adam's mother, Ruth, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s, listened quietly, her expression unreadable. Finally, she looked at Sarah and said, "I'm not so sure you're the right person to lead this company, Sarah. You're young and ambitious, perhaps a bit too ambitious. This company was built on family values, and I don't see much of that left." Sarah didn't flinch. Her calm demeanor seemed to unsettle Ruth, but I could see that Sarah was more prepared than ever. "Ruth," Sarah replied gently, "family values are important to me too. That's why I've been working so hard to turn this place around. I believe in building a legacy that honors the past while looking toward the future." Ruth's husband, Harold, a quiet man who had mostly observed up until this point, finally spoke up. "Sarah, we understand that you're capable, and we've seen some of the changes you've already made," he said slowly. "But our son, Adam, well, he's in a difficult place. He expected this role would stay within the family." Sarah took a deep breath before responding, choosing her words carefully. "With all due respect, Harold, Adam has not shown the commitment or integrity needed to run this company," she said firmly. I've offered him every chance to stay involved, but he chose another path. Harold nodded, as if he'd already known this. Ruth, on the other hand, still seemed skeptical. But after a long silence, she finally sighed and exchanged a look with her husband. "We'll consider your offer, Sarah," she said reluctantly. "Just give us some time." As we left the restaurant, Sarah took my hand, her grip tight. "Thank you for being there," she said softly. "It meant a lot to have you by my side." In the following weeks, Sarah poured all her energy into the company. She met with Harold and Ruth several more times, each meeting bringing them closer to a final agreement. Meanwhile, I continued to manage the new division, overseeing operations and making sure everything ran smoothly. But just as things were starting to settle, Emily reappeared in my life. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I saw her standing by my car, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. I hadn't seen her since our last conversation in the parking lot, and I wasn't exactly thrilled to see her now. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice soft. Reluctantly, I nodded, and we found a nearby cafe to sit down. She fidgeted nervously, stirring her coffee, and finally looked up at me with an expression I hadn't seen before. Regret. "I messed up," she said quietly. I thought Adam would be everything I wanted. I thought he could give me the life I dreamed of. But I was wrong." I didn't respond right away, letting her words sink in. She looked at me, almost pleading, as if hoping I would offer her some kind of forgiveness. "Emily," I said finally, "we both made our choices, and honestly, I'm happy with mine." She nodded, her eyes downcast, and I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness for the life we had once imagined together, and relief that I had moved on. Are you seeing someone?" she asked hesitantly. "Yes," I replied simply. "I'm with someone who respects me and understands the things I care about." Emily sighed, a defeated look crossing her face. She knew, as well as I did, that we were truly over. She forced a small smile, then stood up to leave. "I hope you're happy," she said, her voice barely a whisper. As I watched her walk away, I felt a sense of closure. I had done everything I could to salvage our marriage, but in the end, we had both chosen different paths. Now I was free to pursue a life that felt right, a life that made sense. That weekend, Sarah and I went to a nearby lake, where we spent the day hiking and relaxing by the water. As the sun began to set, we sat together on a blanket, watching the colors shift over the water. "I want to build a life with you," I said, feeling a warmth in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. Sarah smiled, her hand slipping into mine. "I feel the same way," she replied, her eyes reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. In that moment, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Over the next few months, Sarah and I became inseparable, building both our relationship and the company. Sarah's vision was truly inspiring. She brought new life to the business, encouraging innovative ideas and streamlining outdated processes. Under her leadership, the company thrived in ways that had once seemed impossible. Finally, after a series of discussions, Ruth and Harold agreed to sell their shares. The deal was finalized one rainy Friday afternoon, and when Sarah emerged from the conference room, her smile was one of pure triumph. She now held the majority stake in the company, and with that, the power to steer its future entirely on her own terms. We celebrated that night, sharing a quiet dinner at her place, just the two of us. It was a small victory, perhaps, but for us it felt monumental. Our lives had transformed in ways we never could have anticipated. I no longer felt like the person I had been with Emily. I was stronger, more confident, and ready to face whatever came next. As Sarah settled into her role as the official CEO, she wasted no time making changes. The first order of business was addressing the recent mismanagement. Adam had left a trail of financial discrepancies, and Sarah was determined to restore the company's reputation. She organized an independent audit to comb through the finances, ensuring everything was in order and setting a precedent for the new era she was ushering in. However, the fallout from Adam's departure was far from over. Rumors circulated around the office, whispers of lawsuits, and potential investigations. Many of Adam's former colleagues worried that his actions could affect their own roles, but Sarah assured them that only those directly involved in the misconduct would face repercussions. The audit uncovered more than even Sarah had expected. Adam's actions had been reckless, putting the company's finances at risk in ways that bordered on criminal. He had siphoned funds through fake contracts, one of which was under Emily's name, though she seemed unaware of the extent of his deceit. Sarah had no choice but to notify the board, setting in motion a formal investigation. The news sent shockwaves through the office. Emily, who had been blissfully unaware of Adam's underhanded schemes, was devastated. One evening, as I was preparing to leave work, she approached me, her face pale and anxious. "Have you heard about the investigation?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," I replied carefully, unsure of what she expected from me. "Do you think I'll be implicated?" she asked, her eyes wide with fear. "Emily, I don't know the details," I said honestly. "But if you had no part in what Adam was doing, then you should be fine." She looked away, a mixture of shame and regret in her expression. The weight of her choices seemed to settle over her, and for a moment, she looked like the woman I had once known, vulnerable and uncertain. "I was so wrong," she whispered, almost to herself. "I thought he was everything I wanted, but I didn't know the real him." There was nothing more I could say, and eventually, she walked away, leaving me with a strange sense of closure. Emily's life had unraveled in ways she had never anticipated, and while I felt a hint of sympathy, I knew that she was facing the consequences of her own decisions. Meanwhile, Sarah and I continued to grow closer. She became my partner in every sense of the word, someone I could confide in and rely on. We shared a vision for the future, and I felt a kind of happiness I hadn't known was possible. One weekend, as we were sitting on the porch of her family's lake house, she turned to me, a soft smile on her face. "I never thought I'd find someone like you," she said, her voice full of warmth. "You've been with me through all of this, the business, the challenges, the changes. I can't imagine my life without you." I took her hand, feeling a rush of emotion. "Sarah, you're everything I didn't know I was looking for. I've never been happier." In the weeks that followed, we made plans for the future. Sarah had some ambitious ideas for expanding the company, and together we worked late into the night, dreaming up new projects and strategies. It was hard work, but it felt effortless with her by my side. Eventually, the investigation into Adam's actions reached its conclusion. The findings were worse than we had anticipated, with evidence of embezzlement and other serious misconduct. Sarah, as CEO, had to make a difficult decision: either press charges or let it go to avoid further scandal. After careful consideration, Sarah decided to move forward with legal action. She felt that holding Adam accountable was the only way to truly protect the company's future. The decision was not easy, but she handled it with the same determination that had guided her through every challenge. Emily, caught up in the aftermath, was forced to testify in the investigation. While she was not implicated in any of the fraudulent activities, her connection to Adam became a stain on her professional reputation. She eventually resigned from the company, retreating from the life she had once been so eager to build with him. With the investigation behind us, Sarah and I began to look forward. We had weathered a storm that had tested us in ways we never could have imagined, and together we emerged stronger, both as individuals and as partners. One evening, as we walked through the quiet city streets, Sarah looked at me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about what brought us here?" she asked, her voice filled with a mix of curiosity and gratitude. "All the time," I replied, smiling. "It's strange to think how everything started, but I wouldn't change a single thing." She nodded, squeezing my hand. "Me neither." As we stood under the city lights, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for so long. The future was uncertain, but I knew that as long as Sarah and I were together, we could face whatever came our way. With the investigation closed and Adam officially removed from our lives, the company settled into a new era. Under Sarah's leadership, the organization began to thrive, attracting talented people and building a reputation as a forward-thinking enterprise. I threw myself into my role, working on new initiatives and feeling proud to be part of something meaningful. Sarah's strength and vision inspired me, and together we became a team in the truest sense of the word. One day, Sarah invited me to her office for a private meeting. She looked at me with that determined expression I had come to admire, her eyes bright with anticipation. "I've been thinking about taking this company to the next level," she began. "We have the momentum, and I think we're ready to expand into new markets. I want us to establish a new division that focuses on innovation and community impact." Her enthusiasm was contagious, and I found myself nodding, already envisioning what this new project could look like. "I couldn't imagine doing this with anyone else," she continued, her voice softer. "You've been with me every step of the way, and I want you to lead this new division." The weight of her words sank in, and I felt a mixture of pride and gratitude. This was more than just a job. It was a chance to build something lasting with Sarah, a legacy that would carry forward everything we had worked so hard to achieve. "I'm honored," I replied, unable to keep the smile off my face. "Let's make this happen." Over the following months, we poured ourselves into planning and strategy, mapping out every detail of this new division. The process was challenging, but we thrived on it. Our partnership was seamless, each of us bringing our strengths to the table. With Sarah's strategic vision and my focus on operations, we knew we could create something truly impactful. Around this time, I received an unexpected phone call from Emily. Her voice sounded tentative, almost hesitant, as if she wasn't sure how to begin. "I just wanted to, I don't know, thank you, I guess," she said awkwardly. "Things have been tough, but I'm trying to move on." Her words caught me off guard. This was a side of Emily I hadn't seen before, vulnerable and reflective, acknowledging the consequences of her past choices. "I'm glad to hear that," I replied, meaning it. "I hope you find the peace you're looking for." There was a pause, and then she said, "You were always a good person. I didn't appreciate that before." The conversation ended shortly after, and I felt a sense of closure that I hadn't realized I needed. Emily was moving on, just as I had, and for the first time, it felt like a chapter of my life was truly over. Sarah and I continued to build the new division, eventually launching a program aimed at empowering underserved communities. It was a project close to Sarah's heart, and I could see how much it meant to her. We hosted workshops, provided resources, and created opportunities that made a real difference. The success of the program was deeply rewarding, and I knew that we were creating something that would last far beyond our time here. Then, one sunny afternoon, Sarah surprised me with a question that changed everything. "Have you ever thought about starting a family?" she asked, her tone casual yet filled with hope. I looked at her, realizing that this was something we had never discussed. The truth was, I had thought about it, but my life with Emily had made it seem like a distant dream, something I'd convinced myself I didn't need. "With you," I replied, smiling. "Yeah, I have thought about it." Her face lit up, and I could see the joy in her eyes. This was not just a possibility, it was a shared dream, something we both wanted to build together. In the months that followed, our lives became a whirlwind of work, plans, and dreams for the future. We talked about where we wanted to live, what kind of life we wanted to create, and how we would balance our work with family. It was a time filled with hope and excitement, a new chapter waiting to be written. As we continued to grow both professionally and personally, I felt a deeper sense of purpose. Our lives had come full circle, moving from past mistakes and betrayals to a place of love, trust, and partnership. We had weathered storms, faced challenges, and emerged stronger together. One evening, as we were walking through the city, hand in hand, Sarah looked up at me with a smile. "I'm so grateful for everything we've built," she said softly. "I never imagined I could have this kind of life, with someone who understands me completely." I squeezed her hand, feeling the same overwhelming gratitude. "Me too," I replied, "and I can't wait to see what the future holds." As we continued down the street, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't known was possible. We were no longer bound by our pasts, no longer weighed down by regret or uncertainty. Together, we had created a life filled with purpose, love, and the promise of new beginnings. As Sarah and I began to look toward the future, our lives settled into a rhythm that felt both exciting and comfortable. Our new division thrived, growing steadily and attracting attention for its innovative approach to community engagement and sustainability. Sarah's leadership was recognized throughout the industry, and her reputation as a visionary continued to spread. For the first time, it felt as if everything was falling into place, both in our professional lives and our personal relationship. Then, one evening, as we were preparing dinner together in her kitchen, Sarah turned to me with a serious expression. "There's something I want to ask you," she said, setting down her wine glass. "Go ahead," I replied, curious. "Would you ever consider getting married again?" The question took me by surprise. Although we'd been building a life together, the idea of marriage hadn't come up explicitly until now. But as I looked into her eyes, I realized that I didn't need time to think about it. "Yes," I said, without hesitation. "With you, absolutely." Her face lit up, and she reached for my hand. "I was hoping you'd say that." That evening, we sat together, talking about our future as a married couple, imagining the kind of home we would create together. It felt surreal, yet entirely right, as if every twist and turn in our lives had led us to this moment. By the end of the night, we were both buzzing with excitement, and I could hardly believe that I'd found someone who truly understood me in every way. The weeks that followed were a blur of plans and preparations. We kept things simple, choosing a small ceremony with just close family and friends. Sarah's parents were thrilled for us, welcoming me warmly into their family, and I felt like I was finally where I belonged. The wedding day was intimate and perfect. As we exchanged our vows, I felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that I was standing next to the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. We laughed, we cried, and when it was all over, we felt as though we had truly begun a new chapter together. After the ceremony, we retreated to a quiet, secluded cabin by the lake for a few days of rest and reflection. We spent our mornings by the water, sipping coffee and talking about everything from our dreams to the simple joys of everyday life. At night, we sat by the fire, wrapped in each other's arms, and talked about the journey that had brought us here. One evening, as we watched the stars, Sarah turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder what life would have been like if we hadn't met?" she asked softly. I considered her question, thinking about all the choices and twists of fate that had brought us together. "I think I'd still be searching," I replied. "Searching for this feeling, for a life that feels complete." She nodded, and we sat in comfortable silence, each of us reflecting on how far we had come. It was a moment that felt timeless, as if we were the only two people in the world. After our time at the cabin, we returned to the city, ready to dive back into our work. Our shared passion for the company and its mission only grew stronger, and together, we continued to push forward, always challenging each other to reach new heights. Emily's life, on the other hand, had taken a very different path. After the scandal surrounding Adam's financial misconduct and their subsequent breakup, she had faded from our social circles, choosing to keep a low profile. Occasionally, I would hear about her through mutual acquaintances, but she seemed to have embraced a quieter life, far removed from the ambitious woman I had once known. One day, out of the blue, I received an email from Emily. It was brief and to the point. "Hi, I just wanted to say that I'm truly happy for you and Sarah. You deserve this. I know I made mistakes, and I'm sorry for the way things ended. I hope life brings you nothing but happiness." Her words surprised me, bringing a sense of closure that I hadn't anticipated. I replied with a simple, heartfelt message, thanking her for her kind words and wishing her well. It was a small but meaningful exchange, one that allowed both of us to finally let go of the past. As the years passed, Sarah and I built a life filled with laughter, purpose, and adventure. We traveled to new places, explored ideas that challenged us, and shared a love that grew deeper with each passing day. Our work at the company continued to thrive, and together, we became known not just as partners in business, but as a team bound by mutual respect and shared goals. Eventually, we decided to start a family. The idea was both exhilarating and daunting, but we knew that we were ready for this new chapter. When our daughter was born, it felt as though our lives had come full circle. Holding her for the first time, I realized that everything we had been through, every choice, every hardship, every lesson, had led us to this moment. Watching Sarah as a mother filled me with a love and admiration that was almost overwhelming. She approached parenthood with the same dedication and warmth she brought to everything in her life, and I knew that our family was in the best hands. Our life was not perfect, but it was real. We faced challenges, celebrated victories, and grew together in ways that I had never thought possible. Through it all, Sarah remained my partner, my confidant, and my best friend. One evening, as we watched our daughter playing in the yard, Sarah looked at me and smiled. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" she said softly. I nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "Yes, we have, and I wouldn't trade a single moment of it." In that quiet moment, I realized that our journey had been more than just a series of events. It had been a journey of growth, resilience, and love. We had created a life that was rich, meaningful, and filled with a joy that was entirely our own. And as I looked at Sarah, I knew that our story was just beginning. Years passed, and our life unfolded in ways I could have never anticipated. Sarah and I continued to grow together, both as partners in business and as parents. Watching our daughter grow up, I often marveled at how much she took after her mother. Curious, determined, and full of a quiet strength that seemed beyond her years. Sarah and I poured our hearts into raising her, determined to give her the tools to build her own path, just as we had done. As our daughter grew older, our work at the company continued to flourish. The division Sarah had founded expanded, and our community-focused initiatives gained recognition across the industry. People came to know our company not just for its products, but for its mission and values. Together, we had created something lasting, something that would continue to impact lives long after we were gone. But life, as always, had its challenges. As we built our future, there were moments when we faced difficult decisions and setbacks. There were times when the pressures of work and family life felt overwhelming. Yet, through it all, Sarah and I remained each other's rock. We had learned to lean on each other in ways that felt natural, almost instinctive. Our partnership was built on a foundation of mutual respect and trust, and that was something no challenge could shake. One evening, as we were sitting on the porch watching the sun set over the horizon, Sarah turned to me, a thoughtful look in her eyes. "I've been thinking about the future," she said softly, "about what we'll leave behind." I nodded, understanding what she meant. We had worked so hard to build a life that was meaningful, both for ourselves and for the people we cared about. But as the years went on, we both felt a growing desire to ensure that the legacy we had created would endure. Over the next few months, we began to transition more of our responsibilities to a new generation of leaders within the company. We mentored young talent, shared our vision, and slowly stepped back from the day-to-day operations. It was bittersweet, letting go of something we had poured so much of ourselves into, but we knew it was time. With more time on our hands, we traveled, exploring places we had always dreamed of seeing together. We walked through ancient cities, hiked through breathtaking landscapes, and spent long afternoons in quiet cafes, reflecting on the journey we had shared. Every moment felt like a gift, a reminder of how far we had come and how deeply we were connected. One summer, we took our daughter to the cabin by the lake where we had spent our honeymoon. As we sat by the water, watching her play, I realized that everything I had ever wanted was right here. The love, the family, the life that Sarah and I had built together. It was more than I could have ever imagined. As our daughter grew older, she began to show an interest in the company, and we watched with pride as she embraced the values we had worked so hard to instill. She had a natural curiosity and a passion for learning, and we encouraged her to find her own path, to discover what truly mattered to her. Eventually, Sarah and I decided to fully retire, confident that the company was in good hands. It was a strange feeling, letting go of something that had been such a central part of our lives for so long. But as we stood together on the final day in our shared office, I felt only gratitude for the work we had done, for the lives we had touched, and for the journey that had brought us here. In retirement, Sarah and I continued to explore new passions. We volunteered, pursued hobbies we had once set aside, and spent more time with family and friends. Our days were filled with laughter, love, and a quiet contentment that came from knowing we had built a life that was truly our own. One autumn evening, as we were sitting by the fire, Sarah looked at me with a smile, her eyes shining with warmth and love. "Do you remember when we first met?" she asked, a hint of nostalgia in her voice. I nodded, smiling back. I remember thinking that my life would never be the same, and I was right. She laughed softly, and we sat in comfortable silence, each of us lost in memories of the journey we had shared. It was a journey that had been filled with twists and turns, with moments of heartbreak and moments of pure joy. And as I looked at her, I realized that every single moment had been worth it. Our daughter eventually took over the company, bringing a fresh perspective and new ideas. Watching her lead with the same dedication and integrity that had defined Sarah's career was a source of endless pride. We had created something lasting, something that would continue to grow and evolve, even as we stepped back. In our later years, Sarah and I spent more time at the lake house, enjoying the peace and tranquility that had always drawn us there. We watched the seasons change, each one bringing its own beauty and sense of renewal. Life had a rhythm now, a gentle pace that felt both fulfilling and peaceful. As I look back on our life together, I am filled with a sense of awe. We had started out as two people searching for meaning, each of us carrying the weight of our pasts. But together, we had built a life that was rich with purpose, a life that was defined by love, resilience, and the courage to keep moving forward. In the end, our story was more than just a tale of love and partnership. It was a story of growth, of learning to let go of the things that no longer served us, and of finding strength in each other. We had created a legacy, not just in the company we had built, but in the lives we had touched and the love we had shared. And as I sit here, holding Sarah's hand, watching the sun set over the lake, I know that our story will live on in the hearts of those we leave behind. It is a story of hope, of second chances, and of the unbreakable bond that we had found in each other. Our journey may be coming to an end, but our love, our legacy, will endure. And for that, I am endlessly grateful.